I feel like DSP really helped me with my disability. They provided me with a lot of accommodations in classes that, definitely helped me succeed. One of them is like I get extra time on tests 1.5 times, and that really helps. And I also get priority registration, which is good because with my disability, I definitely need to go to sleep and wake up at the same time, or at least similar times every day, to be a better functioning human. I just think, I don't know if it should be with the health center or with DSP, but I think there should be some kind of program that perhaps introduces different like mental health issues and what people may act like when they have different mental health issues to DU students, especially like freshman year. Because for me, it wouldn't have gotten to the terrible point that it got to if anyone around me had any clue of what like bipolar disorder is and what a manic attack is like. And I feel like if either the health center or DSP or both of them or a new organization came together and just like even put posters up on like the walls of halls or something that just said like, hey, is your roommate acting like this or doing this? I feel like that could potentially help a lot of kids. Yeah.
As you just heard in that specific interviewee's interview, he is bipolar and it came on suddenly once he got to college. And a big thing that he said could have helped him was if Campo or DSP or something of the sorts could have maybe put up posters around the school with different types of reactions that you could get from things, or some types of set offs, or something that shows that like, is your roommate suffering from this or is your friend suffering from this, could help them a lot find out what was going on with him, and he could have gotten to a hospital or a doctor sooner. So I think as a society, we all need to come together and help each other out and understand things together and go through the motions.
Um, my name's Julian. I'm a senior at the University of Denver, and I have depression and anxiety. Is that it?
Keep going if you want to answer those questions.
How do you help / accommodated my disability? It hasn't at all.
Can you elaborate on that?
The only help that I've gotten from DU is the help that I sought out. There's almost no help that is offered, so you really have to like put yourself out there, and you really have to be your own advocate for it, which like I'm okay with, because like at the end of the day you're the one in charge of your help. But like it would be nice to have more direction and more assistance, because like even with like the Pioneer Cares report, which I got one on me, they sent 2 emails and I didn't respond to either, and they didn't care. They were like, okay, bye. And like if that was a more serious situation, that would have been like not ideal to just, I guess, not really care to follow up with someone who has legitimately been sent in for help. Helped or accommodated. Yeah, and then building more off of the how they haven't helped, and I think actually like exacerbated it, is I go to the hospitality school, and my advisor has told me I looked mentally unstable, and my professors have just called me lazy and that I don't care, even after I've expressed that I have depression and anxiety, and that's why it's hard for me like in class. And also like ADHD and stuff. I also have ADHD. There's been times when my disability was not all the time. It's really hard for me to like focus, especially like in classes, especially in like math classes. I hate math. And it's just really hard for me to struggle, not accommodated for, and made it difficult. some professors don't really care with deadlines. Some professors don't really help if I email them asking for help. And then actually, there's a class led by the dean of the hospitality school, and we have to write journals. And he graded my journal, which was me just being like open and emotional with him. He gave me an 82 out of 150 and said I wasn't deep or profound enough. And I was like, okay, that's fun. But yeah, I just feel like DU's not very mentally helpful. Hello. Hi. What are some positive ways DU has helped students with disabilities? I mean, I guess once like a student gets their foot in the door, that's good. I'm also a low income student, so I don't have like the health care provided. And so when I went to the HCC, they were like, okay, like we can do like mental health assessments and get you like therapy visits. And then once I told them I had Medicaid, they were like, oh, just kidding, we don't actually help people with that. And I had to get help outside of the university. Positive ways. This might also be TMI, but I won't like say her name. But it's a mutual friend we've had, and when she went to the HCC for help, they changed her medications, and that actually led to a suicide attempt on her part. Do you remember? Starts with a C, ends with a Y. Her and I used to be friends. Yeah. So, DU kind of fucked her over too. My sister tried getting help here, and the same thing happened with her. And also just DU's environment overall isn't very mentally helpful. It's just a lot of drugs and alcohol and kids using those as coping mechanisms instead of actually trying to get help. What needs to change at DU in order to better assist students? I don't know, maybe offering more. What needs to change at DU in order to better assist students with disabilities? I don't know, I feel like I already discussed that, where it's like just more like open communication and like a lot more talk on it. I feel like mental health is still pretty stigmatized, so like not a lot of students like talking about it, and once again use drugs and alcohol to cope. I noticed that a lot freshman and sophomore year and junior year and senior year. All years. But I guess more freshman and sophomore year, because that's when I was like living with more of my peers, and like we talked a lot more on our floor. And I mean, I guess now's a good time more than ever where my roommate sophomore year, speaking of mental health, was actually beaten by his girlfriend, and she got arrested in our dorm room. So, that was an interesting time. But, she has more money than God, so she got away with it. What's the last question? What recommendations would I have for DU to improve? Just a lot more conversations and topics on it. Like, especially like a week with like freshmen, because they're like, yeah, the HCC exists, and that's about it. They also just need to discuss that, like, if you are a low-income student, you're kind of fucked. They can't help you here. They can help you at the professional psychology clinic, but you have to do that all on your own. So, yeah.
So the person I interviewed, obviously he mentioned he had depression and anxiety. Right from the beginning, you see him using like kind of humor to almost address his illness, which is definitely a coping mechanism for him. But he said that like help really isn't handed to you at DU. You have to reach out for it on your own, which he did mention was good in some cases because it is up to the person to get help. But at the same time, he really thought that direction in the system would help improve the quality of care here. He also mentioned how the school didn't really follow up with mentally ill students, so I suppose just like reaching out better and things like that would be helpful. And he did mention his advisors and professors just maybe not being educated on what like his mental health situation was, or any mental health situation for that matter. Um, he just mentioned how he was addressed by those people, and they're supposed to be facilitators. They're supposed to be there to help, and they really just made the situation worse. He touched on his ADHD a little bit and how that really made him struggle with focusing in classes, especially like math classes or classes that he wasn't as passionate about. Um, and he did mention, I guess, some positive ways that the HCC does help, which is when a student goes in, they'll try to give them therapy sessions and things like that. However, since like he mentioned, he was low income student, they turned him away. They won't offer help if they don't have like the insurance, which is not good in any situation. And then in some cases, he mentioned how they tried to help, but they ended up making the situation worse by switching up meds and things like that, which should definitely be checked with like some sort of psychiatric doctor first, and not just something through the student health center. And for what needs to change, he kind of talked about just offering more open communication, more talk about it. And even though it might seem like there's a lot of mental health talk out there on campus, I think it just needs to be a lot more serious and just a lot more engaging. He also touched on how like we need to be watching how these kids are using drugs and alcohol to cope, regardless of what age or grade they may be in. And then recommendations, he talked about more conversations during, especially in O Week, not just saying that the HCC exists, but like what they do there, and maybe talking about different options for low-income kids as well.
Alright, what's going on? I'm sitting here with my buddy Nolan White. What's going on, Nolan?
Hey, how's it going? I'm Nolan, senior from Chicago.
Cool. Well, Nolan, do you want to tell me what kind of disability you have?
Yeah, so I've had ADHD and some associated eye and hearing impairments.
Awesome. Well, so I have 5 questions for you in regards to disabilities and how they're treated here at the University of Denver. And so the first question is, how has DU helped / accommodated your disability?
DU's been pretty great in terms of disability accommodation, just between the letter system and DSP and the LEP programs. DU's got a pretty good idea of how to handle stuff.
Nice. Hey, the second question is, do you feel there has ever been times when your disability was not accommodated for and made it difficult to accomplish tasks at the university?
Yeah, I think in terms of like bigger, larger lecture classes, they're a little bit harder in terms of getting to everybody and kind of focusing on people's individual accommodations, since it's just kind of a larger class.
Nice. How would you say the consistency from classroom to classroom is in regards to how each professor handles students' disabilities?
Yeah, I think it kind of just depends on the class size and how experienced the teacher is and dealing with certain accommodations and getting to everybody. I know I've definitely had some teachers that are pretty good about it, like getting a grip on it like kind of right away, and certain teachers that are kind of just, they get it lost in the shuffle of things they need to do within the class.
Nice. Third question is, in your opinion, what are some of the positive ways DU has helped students with disabilities? And what needs to change at DU in order to better assist students with disabilities?
Well, I think, just maybe having professors become just more aware in general of like the students with accommodations and how to address those accommodations, and just making sure that the university knows that and tells the teachers that there are going to be kind of varying instances and different sort of deals all across in different classes.
Nice. All right, and this is my last question for you. If any, what recommendations / changes would you have for DU to improve?
I don't know, I think they're pretty good about it compared to other certain. I think definitely DU's better than some other universities that I know with in terms of like my other friends and stuff like that. I guess like just kind of like I could recommend like a like an introductory like seminar for like new teachers that are coming into the university in terms of how to deal with students with accommodations.
Awesome. Thanks, Nolan.
It's a pleasure.
For my interview, I decided to interview my buddy Nolan White. Nolan has ADHD, and he also has associated hearing and visual impairments. Nolan says that as far as accommodating his disabilities, he feels like the university does a pretty good job, specifically the DSP and LEP programs. He said if there was one thing to improve upon, he said that it would be the consistency from class to class as far as how each professor handles his disabilities. He says that large lecture halls tend to not handle his disabilities as well as smaller classes do. And then, as far as how he thinks the university could improve upon accommodating his disabilities, he says that he would suggest a seminar for new professors to the university in order to educate them and let them know what is expected of them in terms of how to accommodate students' disabilities.
Hi, I'm Danielle. I'm a senior at the University of Denver. I'm studying real estate and finance. And a few months ago, about 5 months ago, I got diagnosed with depression and got prescribed some medication. Yeah.
Good. How has DU helped accommodate your disability?
Well, like something happened that really like triggered it, so I don't think it's like kind of like I don't think it'll be like a permanent thing in my life. It's just after something happened, it kind of like had a snowball effect on me and the university. It was last quarter. What was that? Fall? No, the spring quarter. During week 5, it happened, and so it was past the date where you were able to drop classes without without having to pay tuition, or you would still have to pay tuition if you drop classes. But the university, they haven't really had many cases where people tried to take medical leaves for something that wasn't like a physical disability or injury. So I've reached out to SOS, which is Student Outreach Support, and they really helped me a lot. They helped me through all the paperwork and the process, so I was able to take those the 5-week break from school because I really couldn't like focus on school and everything that was happening in my life. So they gave me the tuition refund, and I got like the classes off my degree audit and things like that. So they were really helpful with that.
Okay. And do you feel there have been times when your disability was not accommodated for, or that DU made it difficult to accomplish your tasks at the university because of your disability?
Well, this quarter, I came back to school and I was supposed to do a re-entry process just like I did the leaving process, and it wasn't so much DU's fault, but so my healthcare provider, which was in Trinidad, they didn't want to take the responsibility of saying I was fine to come back to school, and then DU wasn't gonna let me like come back to school unless they said that, because that's just what my healthcare provider, they weren't gonna guarantee that nothing would happen to me if I came back. And so DU, like, I wasn't able to register for classes like on time or anything like that. So I guess DU could have made it a little bit easier without having those like expectations in place of just depending solely on my healthcare provider. Like maybe they could have done a different process with going through DU's healthcare and like evaluating me that way. But it was just kind of a hard process just to come back and be able to register for classes.
In your opinion, what are some positive ways DU has helped students with disabilities?
I think that they do a good job in recognizing, like they have the healthcare week where they do all the different workshops even, and they mention like invisible disabilities, and they also promote the health and counseling center a lot. Like they always give me resources on it and say I could do drop-in hours, or they call me and like check up on me to make sure I'm doing okay. So they do a good job in that.
Mm-hmm. What needs to change at DU in order to better assist students with your particular condition?
I think just because I don't know if I was the only one. I'm not sure about that, but I know I was. At least it wasn't common for someone to like be able to take that break. Like I think that an invisible disability, like a mental disability, is just as hard to deal with as a physical disability. And DU doesn't really have that framework to help people be able to take like the breather away from school when they really, really need it. And so it was just like a hard and long process because like no one working there really knew like what to do exactly for someone who like just needed a break from school like mentally. And I think they need like to have that framework just like if someone like needs a they broke a bone or something or a physical disability where they can't come to school, they need to have that same framework for someone who like has like a mental breakdown or something like that and know what to do right away instead of it being months and months long process.
And last question, what recommendations, for example, new programs or changes, would you have for DU to improve?
I think I think they do a pretty good job because they offer so much through the health and counseling center. Like with you could call like 24 hours a day, and like if you need help, they have the 30-minute walk-in sessions, and it's like for free because it's installed in our tuition. So I think just what I said, like having just a framework of like if it is something extreme and someone really just can't do school and like deal with what they're going through at the same time, just have like something installed where it's separate from the physical disabilities and it's just like its own category.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Danielle's experience with her invisible disability shows us that while DU offers some accommodations to students with invisible disabilities, her experience was very complex, it was prolonged, and it was very difficult for anyone who's undergoing a mental health crisis to go through. And with Danielle's experience, the university was presented with a new issue that they were not really ready to deal with. So she explained how she underwent complications in being able to take a leave of absence, as well as re-enrolling back in school due to liability issues and then also the lack of communication between the university and her healthcare provider. And these issues ultimately resulted in her not being able to register for classes on time and to be able to actually have a smooth transition back into school. So while DU promotes mental health assistance and counseling services, there does need to be a better system in place at the administrative level to assist those students who undergo a severe mental health crisis or a triggering event.